Ted is deliberately character assassinating Barney. You watched 9 seasons of this show. You probably hated the finale, but you still do not know what you actually watched. Ted Mosby spent 9 seasons telling us Barney was a manipulative, womanizing nightmare, and we just believed him. Look at what Barney actually does. He flies to San Francisco to bring Lily back to Marshall. He gets Marshall a job. He forces Ted to chase his architecture dream. That is not a villain. That is the most loyal friend in the group. So why does Ted paint him as a cartoon? Because in 2030, Ted asked his kids if he can date Robin, Barney's ex-wife. He needed Barney to look like the lesser man. Neil Patrick Harris admitted Ted's perspective could easily overdraw everyone. The playbook, the aliases, the scorecard. That is Ted's version of Barney. That is not a love story. That is a closing argument. And the first crack in that argument is something the show admits directly. Ted is not just shaping the story, he is losing his grip on it. Ted is an unreliable narrator, and the show confesses it. The show does not hide this, it confesses it. Ted cannot remember the name of a woman he dated for months. He calls her blah blah because the real name is gone. But this same man remembers the exact weather on a random Tuesday 25 years ago. The precise intersection where something minor happened. The color of a dress from a forgettable evening. That is not a quirk. That is a pattern. He narrates Robin's infertility struggle, a moment he was never present for. He admits replacing drug use with sandwich metaphors because he is editing for his kids. The pineapple incident in Season 1, Episode 10. The real answer existed in a deleted scene cut to preserve the gap. Every legendary night, every romantic moment, one man's memory, told 25 years later, with a very specific agenda. You never got the truth. You got Ted's highlight reel. He edited the people. He edited the memories. Now here is what he edited out of the wildest nights entirely, and it is darker than you think. The sandwich covered up something far harder. You already know eating a sandwich is the show's code for marijuana. Ted explains it himself, but watch Season 6, Episode 3. Ted and Marshall eat a sandwich at a Springsteen concert. What follows is not a marijuana experience. Intense paranoia, visual distortion. They become convinced the concert has lasted for days. Those are not cannabis symptoms. That is a psychedelic experience. Mushrooms, LSD, something in that category. A single blanket euphemism covering everything is exactly what a father sanitizing a story would do. So the theory is simple. Sandwich was not one thing. It was Ted's all-purpose edit button, applied to weed on mild nights, applied to something considerably stronger on the nights he really did not want his kids to picture. Every time you heard sandwich, you were getting the clean version. Some of those nights were not clean. Ted edited the drugs. He edited Barney. Now let us look at who may have actually written Barney's most famous possession. Ted wrote Barney's playbook. The playbook appears in Season 5, Episode 8, a physical book, over 75 detailed seduction strategies, structured descriptions, elaborate stage directions, and the handwriting inside is decorative and precise. Ted Mosby has a calligraphy hobby confirmed across multiple episodes. He handwrites wedding place cards. He owns calligraphy ink. His handwriting is a documented character trait. Now look at Barney. Impulsive, impatient, completely uninterested in sitting still long enough to carefully craft anything by hand. The mismatch between Barney and that physical object is impossible to explain away. Ted is the group's archivist. He remembers everything, documents everything, obsesses over their shared stories. The theory, Barney invented the plays out loud at McLaren's. Ted wrote them down, bound them. I kept them. The most famous artifact of Barney's legend was always Ted's creation. Barney's most iconic possession may have been Ted's work. His most iconic daily habit was covering something much darker. Barney's suit obsession is an addiction metaphor. Season 5, Episode 12. A bartender. Barney likes will not date men in suits. Bad experiences with Wall Street types. Barney decides to stop wearing them. Watch what happens. He becomes agitated, sweating. He cannot function. Then he sneaks into a bathroom, puts a suit on in secret, and comes back completely calm. That is a textbook relapse sequence. The bartender's mention of Wall Street is the tell. That world and cocaine have a historically documented relationship. The show already uses coded language for substances, sandwiches for marijuana. The theory? Suits for something else. Barney's daily compulsion to suit up. His visible distress without one. His instant calm when he has it. That is not a fashion preference. That is an addiction cycle encoded inside a catchphrase. Now, the whole time you laughed at Suit Up, the show was showing you a man who could not leave home without his fix. The suits hid something real. The doppelgangers hid something too, and what they were hiding was every character's deepest secret desire. The doppelgangers reveal each character's hidden desire. The show plays the 5 doppelgangers as a comedy bit. Look closer. Every lookalike appears at the exact moment that character is fighting something internal. Stripper Lily arrives when Lily is suffocating in the domestic life she locked herself into at 22. Lesbian Robin surfaces during Robin's deepest identity struggle. Mexican wrestler Ted mirrors the boldness Ted constantly wishes he had instead of his overthinking. Mustachioed Marshall appears when Marshall keeps bouncing between corporate work and the career that would make him happy. And Barney's doppelganger, calm, stable, responsible, is a fertility doctor. The one Marshall and Lily treat as a cosmic sign to have children. The universe sent Barney's double to announce a baby, because even the universe knew what Barney actually wanted, and he spent 3 more seasons pretending he did not. The doubles mapped what everyone was hiding. The colors mapped where everyone was going, and this next one was drawn into the show frame by frame. The yellow and purple color system is a hidden roadmap. Reddit user Spam Filter Hates Me documented this, and once you see it, the show changes permanently. Yellow is Ted's right path toward Tracy. The yellow umbrella appears at the St. Patrick's Day party in Season 1, at Columbia, at the Farhampton train station. Every single appearance marks a step closer. Purple is Robin, the wrong direction. It starts in Season 1, Episode 2, literally titled Purple Giraffe, where Ted throws multiple parties just to see Robin again. Purple threads through every Ted and Robin arc for 9 seasons without a break. Then in Season 7, Episode 15, the episode Ted finally lets Robin go, every main character wears purple the entire episode. At the very end, Ted walks into a crowd of yellow umbrellas. Yellow and purple are direct color wheel opposites. The writers drew a coded map across 208 episodes. You were reading it the whole time without knowing it. The colors told you where Ted was going. What they could not tell you is why the woman he was heading toward was always running out of time. The mother was always dying. They told you from Season 1. The evidence starts in Season 1. Ted's favorite book, one established from the very beginnings, is Love in the Time of Cholera, a novel about a couple who only reunite after one spouse dies. Ted is reading that same book at Farhampton Station the day he meets Tracy. In Season 7, Marshall visits his father's grave. Right beside it sits a stone that reads simply, Mother. In Season 8, Episode 20, Ted imagines running to Tracy's apartment just to have 45 extra days with her. At the time, it sounds romantic. After the finale, it is unbearable. Then in Season 9, Episode 19, Tracy quietly asks Ted, what mother is going to miss her daughter's wedding? Ted breaks down. They both already know. Tracy asked that question already knowing the answer. For 9 years, the show was saying goodbye, and here's what makes that worse. The man telling this story may have been keeping his own secret about time running out. Ted is terminally ill. Tracy died in 2024. By 2030, Ted has been a widower for 6 years. Look at what he does in that framing device. He recounts a decade of extraordinarily specific memories, exact intersections, precise weather on random Tuesdays, the color of a dress from 25 years ago, non-stop, across what would realistically be an entire day. That is not casual storytelling. That is someone trying to get everything out while there is still time. Ted watched Tracy document her own decline. He knows what a terminal timeline looks like from the inside. The theory, the 2030 monologue, is not a story. It is a father making sure his children know who he was before he can no longer tell them. Not bad structure. Someone racing the clock. If Theory 8 or Theory 9 just changed how you see this show, subscribe. I do this every single week. I hit the bell or YouTube will bury it. Now, and because the next character you thought was lovable. The evidence says something completely different. Lily is the show's real villain. If you think Lily is the worst person in this group, wait until Theory 14. But first, Lily runs what she calls the front porch test. She decides whether Ted's girlfriends fit her long-term vision of the group. If they fail, she sabotages them. The show confirms this explicitly. She broke up multiple of Ted's serious relationships without his knowledge. She stole from her boss Hammond Druthers, an actual crime, played for laughs. She hid massive credit card debt from Marshall for years, forcing him to abandon environmental law for a corporate firm he hated. Lily does not think she is manipulating anyone. She thinks she is curating. She has never apologized for any of it. The show calls her the heart of the group. The behavior calls her something else entirely. Lily controlled the group from the inside, and Ted's narration controlled everything from the outside, and it did something very specific to one person. Barney is not real. Ted built the persona. Every outrageous Barney story, the playbook, the aliases, the impossible conquest numbers, comes entirely from Ted's narration. All of it. Ted admits he edits the story, swaps drug use for metaphors, forgets names. The theory, Ted took one real person and amplified every reckless trait into a cartoon because he needed someone to carry the wildness he did not want to own himself. Every bad decision gets attributed to Barney. Ted stays the responsible one by comparison. Meanwhile, the real Barney, and who retrieves Lily, builds Ted back up after every heartbreak, loved Robin more than he ever admitted. Barely gets screen time. Ted has been doing this through so much grief. across so many years. He may not be able to separate the fiction from the memory anymore. Ted built a version of Barney. He may have also built his entire audience. Ted's children are not real. Tracy died in 2024. Grief makes people replay everything. Every conversation, every decision, every moment they cannot take back. The theory: Ted invented an audience because he needed to process all of it, and there was nobody left willing to sit still for it. Penny and Luke sit on that couch across what would realistically be an entire day. Same clothes every episode. They barely react. Real teenagers interrupt, complain, check their phones. These two just absorb. No pushback whatsoever. And Ted never once calls Tracy his wife. She is always your mother. That is not how a widowed parent speaks about the person they loved. That is how someone addresses characters in a story built alone inside their own head. The children are not real listeners. They are how Ted survives losing her. The audience may have been imaginary. And the memories Ted was trying to hold, they may have been slipping away faster than anyone realized. Ted has early onset Alzheimer's. Ted goes into obsessive detail about mundane events. A specific Tuesday at McLaren's. The exact weather the night he first saw Robin. A precise intersection from 25 years ago. Then he forgets a girlfriend's name entirely and calls her blah blah for a full episode. He breezes past enormous life milestones in 2 sentences. He narrates moments he was never present for and presents them as fact. That pattern, vivid emotional long-term recall alongside specific name loss and recent detail gaps, is clinically documented in early-stage memory disease. The theory: Ted is not telling this story because he wants to. He is telling it because he has to before the details dissolve. Every tangent, every obsessive return to one night. Not bad storytelling. Someone fighting to remember who they were. Well, Ted's memory may be failing. The most carefully hidden thing in this show was not in the dialogue. It was in the background of a single episode, and almost nobody caught it. The Marshall's dad. Death countdown was in every frame. Season 6, Episode 13, titled Bad News. It ends with Marshall learning his father died of a sudden heart attack. Go back and watch from the first scene knowing what to look for. The writers embedded a countdown from 50 to 1 hidden in the background of every scene. Jersey numbers, taxicabs, apartment numbers, calendars, pamphlets on waiting room walls. Each number appears exactly once in descending order, leading precisely to the moment Marshall gets the call. At number 1, his father is gone. Most viewers never noticed on first watch. The devastation landed with no warning, but the show had been counting down the entire time. Tragedy never announces itself. It is always counting down in the background. You just were not watching the right numbers. They hid a death inside the wallpaper of one episode. They hid something even more important inside the symbol you have been watching since Season 1. Max's ghost gave Ted permission. Tracy's first love was Max. He died young before the show begins. The yellow umbrella she carries throughout the series, she bought it after losing him. It is a grief object. In Season 9, Episode 6, Tracy sits alone on a hotel balcony and speaks directly to Max's spirit. She asks his permission to move on. Only after that conversation, only after she releases Max, does she fully open herself to Ted. The theory: Ted's ultimate soulmate was always Robin. Tracy's was always Max. Two people who lost their first loves found each other in between. Their marriage was real and profound. When Tracy died, she returned to Max. The controversial ending is not a betrayal. It is 2 separate love stories, finishing what they started. Max let Tracy go. Now, the next theory is about what happens when someone cannot let go, and builds an entire story to avoid admitting it. Barney secretly adopted Ellie. The finale gives Barney a daughter named Ellie from a one-night stand during his perfect month. The mother is never shown, never named, never mentioned again. For a show that spent 9 seasons cataloging every romantic detail in these characters' lives, that gap cannot be an oversight. The theory? Barney chose this. He arranged a quiet adoption and packaged it as a casual accident, because admitting he wanted a child would mean admitting how far behind he felt as everyone around him grew up. Watch Barney and Marshall and Lily's family moments across the later seasons. Under every joke, something quieter, something like longing. Then in the finale, he holds Ellie and transforms completely. That is not a man surprised by an accident. That is a man who already knew what this moment would cost him, and paid it anyway. Barney's biggest surprise may have been planned. Robin's entire character, the theory says, was never what the show presented. Robin is a sociopath. The show frames Robin's emotional detachment as confidence. Season 2, she lies to Ted directly and repeatedly while he visibly unravels. She shows no guilt whatsoever. Season 3, when she and Barney begin sleeping together secretly. Barney carries visible distress. Robin moves through it without any friction, completely unbothered. Her career supersedes every relationship without exception. Emotional closeness gets deflected with sarcasm the moment it becomes real. Individual moments read as quirks. String them across 9 seasons. composure while lying, absence of guilt, consistent inability to sustain intimacy, and the pattern has a clinical name. The show called it independence. The behavior, examined without the laugh track, reads as something colder. And Ted, and for reasons this entire script has been building toward, may have never been able to see it clearly. Robin's detachment ran 9 seasons. The next theory is about the woman who understood everything and imagined the only world where it all made sense. Friends is Tracy's dying imagination. This is not frame-by-frame proof. This is the theory that is emotionally true even if it was never the writer's intention. Tracy McConnell is dying. In her final year, she knows her husband's entire history, his friends, his decade in New York, his complicated relationship with Robin. The theory? Tracy spent those years imagining a fictionalized version of the people Ted loved, and that world is Friends. Ted becomes Ross, the intellectual who cannot stop chasing the wrong person. Robin becomes Rachel. Marshall and Lily become Chandler and Monica. Barney becomes Joey. Tracy imagines herself as Phoebe, the quirky musician nobody quite matches. Friends is not a separate show. It is the love letter a dying woman wrote about the people her husband loved, filtered through the only imagination she had left. Tracy reimagined everyone she loved. Ted did the same, but with a legal strategy, and this next theory makes the entire show click into place. The finale was always the plan. The whole show is Ted's closing argument. Carter Bays and Craig Thomas filmed Penny and Luke's reaction, telling Ted to go get Robin in season 1. They held that footage for 9 years. The entire show was built backwards from that moment. Every story Ted tells, every detour, every tangent, not filler. A man building a case. Ted is constructing a closing argument across 9 seasons for why he deserves to love Robin again. Every story is evidence. Every failed relationship is an exhibit. At the end, he presents it to the only jury that matters, his kids. Ted did not tell this story to inform anyone. He told it to survive Tracy's death. He kept building it until he constructed something he could believe in again. That is what grief does to a storyteller. It makes him argue his way back to being alive. And then there is Marshall. The character this show was too afraid to make the loudest voice in the room, because what he did quietly contains the only truth every other character spent 9 seasons avoiding. Marshall is the only character who actually grows, and the show buries it? Ted stays romantically obsessed for 20 years. Robin runs from real commitment until the finale hands her one. Barney builds an identity around not changing, then gets one scene to reverse it. Lily makes the same controlling choices in season 9 she made in season 1, but Marshall, from the moment his father dies in season 6, genuinely changes. He processes grief and finds real clarity. He takes the judgeship. He chooses his family deliberately. He becomes the person he always said he wanted to be. The show treats this as the least interesting arc in the room, because Marshall growing up forces everyone else to see their own stasis. So the show buries it. Ted needed a story. Robin needed a career. Barney needed a persona. Marshall just lived his life. And that is the only truth this show never said out loud. 20 theories, every single one built from scenes you already watched. The show never hid any of this. Ted was always asking permission. Tracy was always running out of time. And Barney, the most cartoonish, legendary, impossible character in the group, was probably the most loyal person in that bar. Go back to season 1. Watch the pilot. This time, don't watch Ted. Watch everyone else watching Ted. The whole story is already there. You just needed to know what you were looking for.